Right, good afternoon, everybody. I am Mark Chrystal. I am the CEO and co-founder of Profitmind, and we are the first AI agent built specifically for the retail industry. And I'll explain why we know that in a second. My background is a 25-year retail executive. And also have a doctorate in the application of AI to drive business transformation. And I grew frustrated as a long-term business operator with the lack of tools available to retail teams to make decisions. So to give that some perspective, a typical retailer has about 2 petabytes of data. They are grappling with unbelievable market pressures and speed of change. You think about not only inflation and tariffs that are kind of in the news now, but e-commerce and what that's done to the industry over the last 20 or so years, and social media and the speed at which retail and fashion trends change. And I speak to probably 10 or 15 retailers a week. And every retailer that I talk to is effectively running their business with 2 petabytes of data out of Excel spreadsheets because they don't have the tools they need to really help them make decisions. So the typical retailer has between 10,000 and 25,000 active spreadsheets at any one time and tens of thousands of reports. And so the teams are coming in and they've got armies of people trying to figure out what's going on. What are we going to do about it? How do we navigate the business forward, all in Excel spreadsheets? So it's an industry that is absolutely ripe for change. And so I decided to leave my inline job in retail and go and tackle this problem. So I left inline retail 4 years ago, went out to Silicon Valley, partnered with the gentleman you see on the screen here, Andrew Ng. Many of you will know of him or know him. He's a CMU grad, and you can see he's heavily involved in founding AI at Google. It's on the board of Amazon, founder and chairman of Coursera. He saw an application of AI into this space as well, and so we partnered together. We founded Profitmind together out in Silicon Valley. We've subsequently relocated the company to Pittsburgh thanks to Magarac Venture Partners and CMU. And Andrew actually is generally accredited with coining the term agentic AI as well. I'm not sure he would ever claim that, but the New York Times is claiming that anyway. And so I'll get a little bit into what we've built. So to tackle this problem with retailers, what we decided to do was really make sure that as we were deploying an AI, which we knew was going to be really scary to teams in retail, that they're like, okay, I'm in Excel and now you're giving me this like Ferrari AI solution that I'm not sure if I'm quite ready for. There was also a lot of press as we were building this a few years ago that AI was not actually providing a return for businesses, and it was a lot of hype. And so what we decided to do as we built the solution was, let's focus on the core problems of a retailer. What are the things that are actually going to move the needle? How do we drive real ROI on the solution and do it immediately? And so what we've done is we built a system that focuses on price optimization, inventory optimization, assortment optimization, competitive intelligence, analysis of the marketing. It also does planning analysis and gives the teams kind of alerts on trends in the business as well. And again, we did this very specifically because we wanted to focus on the most immediate problems. All of the customers that have now used the solution, it has actually paid back the entire annual subscription the first month it goes live, because we are focused on moving the needle right now. So let me talk to you about then how it works. Oh, and by the way, we launched this solution in January of 2024, before the term, I think, had even been coined, which is why we know it's the first AI agent. At the time, we actually had to call it an analyst because we didn't know quite what to call it, and now we can actually comfortably call it an agent. And so let me describe the way it works, and you've already heard some discussion about how agents work in general anyway. So it takes inputs. So one of the primary inputs that we feed in is the business objective. So this is what the agent's mission is to solve. What are you trying to do as a retailer? How are you trying to win in the market? Who's your competition? How are you trying to beat that competition? We feed that in, and they actually tell us that in business language, and our system brings it in, interprets it, and understands it. We bring in all their data. We also go out and we scrape the internet, and we go and find all of their information, all their competition, their assortments, their competitors' prices in real time. And we even bring in feedback from the user teams into the agent so it learns, and I'll explain that in a moment. Once we give the agent all of these inputs, and the mission is go and find solutions and actions that will actually deliver the business objectives, it then starts using the tools that we give it. So we've given it tools like machine learning models. So it has the ability to create demand forecasts and price elasticity models using machine learning, and it knows those are some of the outputs that we need to drive action. It uses computer vision models. As it scans the web, it compares the images of products and can figure out what products are competitive and what aren't, and fully automates the competitive shopping process for retailers. So it just automates it, figures out what's competitive, and brings all that data in real time as well. And then it has optimization built in. And so the optimization is really just constantly looking for what are the best solutions to these problems. It will run through millions of permutations, find the best answer, and then produce the best answer. To get to actions, we've done a number of things. So we use language models, use some off-the-shelf language models, but we've also fine-tuned our own language models. So we actually trained our agent on retail training courses. So it speaks retail, it can do retail math, it can understand the objectives, and it can communicate the results back to the business teams in language that they understand. And it uses that reasoning as it assesses the output of the models. So as the machine learning models are producing results, the agent is able to look at the results and say, okay, does this make sense relative to the objective of the business? And if it does, it's something that it carries forward. If it does not, it filters it out and says, okay, it might be interesting, but it's not actually going to move the needle on the business, and I'm going to just filter it out, and I know it's not a relevant thing to show them. It also feeds in prioritization. So what it does, it goes through and quantifies all the opportunities in the business, ranks and prioritizes them, applies business rules. So things like all my products need to end in 95 cents or 99 cents, whatever it is. It applies all those types of rules to all of the output that it produces. And then ultimately the output is the key actions. So when the business team today, a retailer basically, and the retail teams come in very often on Sunday afternoons to start wading through this data. They then spend all day Monday, a lot of Tuesday wading through all this data. Basically what they can do with Profitmind is they come in at 9 o'clock on a Monday morning. It's done all that work, and it's actually telling them, here are the things that you need to go and focus on in priority order, and they're going to make the most difference to the business, all quantified with financial impact, backed up with machine learning models, and everything is explained in terms of why you should do this in retail language and connected back to the objectives of the business, so that they can say, okay, this makes sense because it ties into what I'm trying to do in the first place. And then on top of that, we have reinforcement learning with human-in-the-loop feedback. So they tell our agent, based on the output that's provided to them, whether it did a good job or not. And it learns from that. So we think we've got the equivalent of about 1,000 years of retail experience built in already through this reinforcement learning, because we've been doing this for 18 months. So it's learning from these 30 or 40-year experienced merchants and business teams what is a good recommendation, what isn't a good recommendation, what works, what doesn't work for business, what's competitive with a business and what isn't. It's got all that knowledge now baked into it, and it continues to get smarter as it goes. And every single week it retrains itself. So if it does a bad job, it assesses how its models were and whether the models were accurate or not, as it tracks the accuracy, but also retrains based on the feedback that it gets from the users around whether it's doing good recommendations or not for the business. So this is kind of the tie back to the work reimagined. So now instead of wading through all these spreadsheets and all this data, the teams are coming in and they've got a scorecard every day, every week from a strategic perspective. How am I doing against what my objectives are as a business? Where is it working? Where am I not working? What adjustments do I need to make? It then also has actions that are identified and quantified and also prioritized. So literally the teams come in and it tells them the 5 things they need to go and do today in priority order. And so what we find, and I'll show you the results in a minute, is not only are we finding more financial opportunity than they can find, but it's a massive team productivity booster, because you think about teams being buried in data and not knowing really what's in the data and where they need to spend their time. They spend a lot of time on things that aren't actually going to add a lot of value and they just don't know it yet. We get them focused on the things that are actually going to, the 10 or 15% of things that are going to drive 80, 90% of the value. And so here are the results. So as I said, we rolled this out in January of 2024. These are results across our average customer base. We rolled out to 8 enterprise retailers last year. The average growth of our customer was 21% in sales, 14% in profit. And largely it's because they just can't see the opportunities today because of the amount of data they're dealing with. And our system really goes through and just gets them focused on the right problems at the right time. We are getting involved in organizational transformation because we're really the first to come in and do this in the industry. So what we are seeing, and it tags into a lot of the comments that we heard earlier, we're seeing that now the businesses that use our solution need fewer resources to do all this analysis. They just don't need the armies of people sitting on spreadsheets all day trying to figure out what's going on. And we're seeing a fundamental shift away from that work to now more focus on the strategy and the decision making in the market that AI is not quite ready to do yet. It's that the kind of the human level thinking around the corners around what's coming that is much more of a focus. And even time spent in meetings and meeting cadence is now shifting because you just don't have to spend as much time doing this kind of tactical work. But we do see challenges. So there are adoption challenges. So, one of the fundamentals as we've introduced the solution is fear of job loss, because they're like, oh God, this is coming from my job and I'm not sure if I want to bring it in. And also trust barriers. And I think we heard about that from the last speaker. A lot of well, can I trust these recommendations to run my business? And so we've been doing a lot of mitigation tactics around this. So focusing more on this as a solution to augment versus replace. So we've stopped short of full execution of the opportunities that we find and more a recommendation to the teams. The reality is, though, and it is on our roadmap, that we're going to take over the execution as well. So we're going to have far fewer people at the top of the organization looking at the recommendations, saying yes or no, and then our system and systems like ours going and just executing those opportunities through the corporate systems. And then the other piece that we've brought in, as I talked about, is we've made everything explainable. We did not want to make this a black box because we knew that this was going to be a trust issue. So everything is explained everywhere in the platform in retail language, and there's actually an interaction so they can ask questions. There's an analyst that they can bring up and ask more questions so they can get comfortable with the answers and the recommendations that the system's providing, and then get to a point whether they accept or reject the recommendations that the system is putting forth.